I have been tagged in a thing. Thank you to Sarah from Novel Sarah-ndipity for tagging me. It's the first time I've ever been tagged, and I realized that it's basically just everyone that's doing the Pokemon Badge-a-thon because of what the tag is. I don't care. I feel special. This is the legendary Pokemon book tag. Books based on legendary Pokemon. So let's get into it. First up is Mew. Choose your favorite book, the book that started it all. And of course, I've said it so many times, for me, this is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. This is the actual physical book I picked up at the RIF Reading is Fun Day in 4th grade. And I have loved it ever since. I was one of those crazy kids reading in middle school, like 3 to 5 books a week. But this is the first book where I really felt engrossed in the story, where I just desperately need to know what happens next. If you don't know what this book is, it revolves around a young girl born in India whose parents die of cholera. She is sent to live with her uncle at Misselthwaite Manor in the English countryside, knowing nothing about the land. She is a brat when she appears, but discovering the secret garden and that exists somewhere on the land helps distract her, and she grows as a result of it. I will always love this. It will remain my favorite of all time. The tattoo I have is inspired by it. I'm just in love. Can you hear that? I'm sorry if you can. Up next is Mewtwo, a series in which you prefer the sequel to the first. Now this one I'm actually changing a little. It's a book right before the third, and that is The Shadow Campaigns by Django Wexler. My personal favorite as of right now is The Price of Valor, the third in the series. The first in the series, while being fantastic enough to get me to read, as I've mentioned before, the series has to warrant me continuing. There were some things that were a little iffy with the allegorical Middle Eastern people in the beginning. I wouldn't call it problematic or toxic or what have you, but just a little bit. However, when he sets the characters in a different setting and continues, it's much better. So the Shadow Campaign series is a flintlock fantasy based heavily on the military aspect. It is a country going through a lot. There's a desert campaign, there's a civil war, a rebellion, all of their stuff going on. And basically the main characters are caught up in the midst of it while still being members of the military, using their flintlock pistols and all of that. There's a lot of emphasis on military maneuvers and that kind of stuff, which I usually don't like, but the book mix seems so pertinent and I really enjoy that. This specifically, I can't get into too much detail because it is the third, but the number of well thought out, well-rounded, incredibly strong female characters hits its peak in this one for right now. I'm going to read the fourth one soon for the Pokemon Badge-a-thon, so I'm hoping that that one will like even more. Next up is Zapdos, a book where you wanted a character to be struck down by lightning, and this one, I knew exactly what I wanted. So this is Little Darlings by Melanie Goldings is the arc, so I don't have it. But this is a modern fantasy. It is a retelling, only a retelling of a changeling child story. A young mother, a new mother of twins, gets her boys switched out at birth for this other pair of twins. Or did she? Is it all in her head? It's hard to be sure. I read this for review, and so I took notes. And I can show you in my notes that I definitely disliked the character. At one point, the main character's husband, Patrick, basically tells her that he wants to sleep through the night, and so he's just not going to get up with the kids anymore because he's going to be going back to doing real work soon, and it's all going to be on her. And so when that moment came, you can see in my notes here, that was my thought. That is how I thought about that character. And so I would definitely love him to be struck by lightning. TBH, would not bother me at all. Okay. This one. Okay, up next is Moltres. And this is a book that got your blood boiling. And anyone that has watched my best and worst of indie books knows which one I'm going to be talking about. And that is Juxtaposed City by Trisha Owens. This is a futuristic cyberpunk gay romance that should have been awesome. And instead it was fetishizing. There was not a single female character of note. And the worst and I don't want to just blurt this out. How do I say this nicely? The worst part was when the characters that are supposed to be falling in love, the main character is falling in love, one of them attempts to rape the other. So, yeah, didn't like that at all. I'm not going to get on board with a relationship when that happens in the first book in the series. I DNF'd the series. I'm done. I've ranted about it enough in another video. If you're really desperate to know, like, in depth of how bad it got, I'll put the episode that's in the description below, but I'm not going to get into too much more than that. The next up is Articuno, a book that you would wait for the world to freeze over before you got rid of it. Now, my first thought was, oh, my Secret Garden copy, because that's the original I have. But as much as I like that copy, it is falling apart. I can't read it as much anymore. I read digital copies, so I thought, what physical book could I not get in another form what I want to keep a hold of? And this is actually the Random House Book of Poetry for Children. This is an anthology. It was selected, all the poems were chosen by Jack Pruletsky, and when I was a kid, he was one of my favorite kids' authors. This was a gift from my grandparents when I was 12, so it is pretty old, and as you can see, it's kind of falling apart, but I used to just stare at this thing forever, and because it's an anthology, and because it's specifically illustrated in a certain way, I don't think I could get this anywhere else. I know all the poems exist in other forms, but the fact that it's here and like this, and I don't know that it's still printed, I've never seen it, I don't think. So this one will probably be the one where it's like, I will wait for this to just be literally falling apart at the seams before I give it up. The next up is Lugia, a book that has psychic powers, or a book that speaks to you on a personal level. And for me, this was The Silence of Bonaventure Arrow by Rita Lagansky. This book, it's our adventure. It revolves around a young woman whose husband dies while she's still pregnant with their son. However, their son is born with a strange sort of hearing. Is born with a strange kind of extra hearing, and he actually can hear the ghost of his father speaking to him. This book is essentially about the boy, Bonaventure Arrow, his mother, his father, everyone involved in this man's death, essentially trying to move on from it. And so you know that it's not going to have a happy ending. It's not going to have him magically coming back to life and all the family being whole again. It's essentially them getting closure and letting go. And it was done so sweetly and so beautifully, and the ambiance of the world of 1950s Louisiana was done so well that it literally made my chest ache with how sweet it was, and I think my eyes teared up a little. I don't think I cried. I don't think I straight up cried, but I got close, which is a big deal for me. I don't usually do that. But yes, this is an unsung gem, and I would highly suggest it. Up next is Entei, which is to say a book or a character from a book that you wouldn't mind being your replacement father, or like your father. So this one I picked Gaius Marcellinus, or Marcellinus Gaius, from the Clash of Eagles trilogy by Alan Smale. This is an alternate history where Rome did not fall to the Huns, but instead continues on and ends up in what they call Nova Hesperia, aka modern-day North America, and meeting the tribes there. Marcellinus is very easily defeated in battle by the Native Americans and their strange new technology. I guess they're not Native Americans. They're just people. Well, they were always just people. Anyway, he is defeated, but is kept alive, and over the course of the trilogy, which is about 10 years, ends up just falling in love with the culture and being there, as well as falling in love with a woman and her daughter. This is basically his second chance. He's been married with a daughter before, and neither of them liked him all that much. He got divorced. His daughter doesn't speak to him, and this new family of Sintikala and her daughter Kibimela are everything to him. I mean, the world to him. And even when he's offered the chance to go back to Rome, he says a hard no. This is my home now. So in the beginning of the story, probably not. He wouldn't even be old enough to be my father at the beginning. But at the end, 10 years later, yes, definitely. Next up is Ho-Oh, a book that you feel no one knows about, but you adore. And this one, Starmark Rising by Shami Stovall. This is an indie book that's been newly published, I believe, February. This isn't an arc, but it was an advanced copy. It's the final thing. Anyway, this is a sci-fi space opera revolving around a young man named Clevan who's kind of desperate to get off his space station and onto a planet, and a young woman named Andelian Vought, who is a captain of the space cruiser, gives him the opportunity. If she can become a planet governor, which is a very hard thing for anyone of non-superhuman status to do, he gets his plot on the planet. Things ensue. The ending is, I really need the second one. I need to see certain characters get their comeuppance. I loved all the explosions. I ship two characters hardcore, and I don't usually ship. I just ship them so hard. I love this book. I hype it up every time someone talks about sci-fi or indie books. But because it is indie and because it is newly published, it seems like no one knows about it, and I'm desperate, guys. You need to get out and buy this because you need to convince Shammy that she needs to continue writing it. Please. And last is Latios and Latios, which is a book with duo heroines or heroes that you absolutely adore that save the day. Now, I kind of twisted this a little because it's not strictly that, but I kind of love this book anyway. The Two Princesses of Bomar by Gail Carson Levine. She is the same woman that wrote Ella Enchanted. This is about two princesses, Addie and her sister Meryl, who are plotting their futures. And Addie is always terrified of the world and insists that Meryl can't go off and have all the adventures she wants until she's safely married. But Meryl falls very ill with this, I think it's called the Grey Death. And Addie is the one who has to go off and find the cure for her sister. Now, the entirety of the story is mostly Addie's perspective, but just the love between the sisters, and there is no competition between the two. They just truly love each other. And Meryl does get her chance at her own story in a way. And I loved it. And I think this is especially pertinent because this is a book all based around their relationship. I mean, it's of the title. And if you haven't read this, I know it is mid-grade, it's young, but I highly suggest it, especially if you loved Ella Enchanted and that kind of book. It has that same kind of feel. So now would be the point where I say the people to tag next. I can't think of anyone. If I can, I'll put it down either in the description or on Twitter. But I'm so bad at this. I don't know because so many people were tagged when I was tagged. So like, I don't really know. But if you would like to try this, please do. And also be on the lookout for the Pokemon videos coming up. I'm so excited about that. So much Pokemon content going to be on my channel. It's so much fun. But with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.